Great. Well, welcome everyone. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. This is the third in our spring series from Suzanne Bontempo with Plant Harmony and Our Water, Our World. And the focus on drought-proof gardening. This session and this series are co-hosted by the Fairfield-Suisun Sewer District. I'm a senior engineer. My name is Emily Corwin from the Fairfield-Suisun Sewer District, and our co-host is the Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District. So a little bit about Suzanne before we start is that she is a program manager for Our Water, Our World. And she works as an environmental educator, teaching the principles of integrated pest management for sustainable, eco-friendly pest management around the home and garden. She's worked as a professional gardener for over 20 years and is an integrated pest management advocate, a Rescape Bay-friendly qualified landscaper, a QWEL certified, a master composter, and loves teaching folks how to grow bountiful gardens that are also safe and healthy for you, your family, and the environment. And this is my third webinar being in attendance, and I can vouch for the wealth of information we are about to get. And if this is your first time joining, or if you want to go back and see some of the previous sessions, we've just finished uploading the previous two to our Fairfield-Suisun Sewer District website, and I just pasted the link in the chat so you can navigate there. So welcome you to check those out. And I think with that, Suzanne, I'll pass it to you.
All right, thank you, Emily. I'm really excited that the past webinars are available for viewing on the website. That is really cool. So thanks everyone for your patience and with my reply and getting that information out to you. So yes, let's talk about some drought-proof gardening. So here in California, we live in a climate that is summer dry. And in addition to that, we've been in a perpetual drought. So it gets kind of challenging out there. So I'm really excited. I created this program to share with you several ways to keep our gardens healthy and happy while saving water, because happy plants and healthy plants are less inclined to get pest problems. And since that's my whole focus, let's learn about how we can protect our plants during these challenging times. So I'm going to go through the slides. I've got a lot of content for you, and what we're going to, but there'll be time at the end for your questions, but please at any point, don't hesitate to add questions to the Q&A or drop comments in the chat. Emily is assisting me with that this afternoon. And then we will also look at leave time for questions at the end. But I'm going to review and provide an introduction to the Our Water, Our World program, plus review what integrated pest management is and how that relates to our program today. I will talk a little bit about gardening in California, and then we'll jump into how we can use less water. And then how much water do plants really need? That's a question that comes up a lot. Which plants are best for my garden? I'm going to share. I'm also going to share tools for conservation and then tools for protecting our plants during these days when it goes from just kind of normal hot to excessive hot, like I'm experiencing today, at least. Maybe you are too. And then, of course, time for Q&A. So the Our Water, Our World program, for those of you that are not familiar with it, is a program that partners with water pollution prevention agencies and retail stores. You might recognize our materials at your local retailer. We have either a literature rack, fact sheets, as in the picture on the left, that's available for you to take those fact sheets. If you happen to ever have any of those pest problems, such as ants or cockroaches or rats and mice, and so forth. Or if you'd like to learn how to grow beautiful roses with a more eco-friendly way, or growing your lawn that's going to be water saving and more eco-friendly. Then you might also notice the little blue shelf talker tags that we place under products that will guide you to products that are not going to be toxic to our waterways. So they are eco-friendly products that break down very quickly and will not pollute our waterways. And we also teach integrated pest management principles to the public. And a part of that is webinars like this that we make available so that we can help you reduce your pest problems with an eco-friendly approach. You can find more information on ourwaterourworld.org. And Our Water Our World is all about helping our waterways stay clean and protected from toxic chemical pollutants in the form of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. So something we like to share is that anything that we're using around our house, understand when we do get rains or if we happen to have an irrigation break or any type of overflow from watering, that water is moving off our properties in the form of runoff and picking up with it any residuals from synthetic fertilizers and chemical pesticides that are not eco-friendly, and moving right down into the storm drain that flows directly out to local waterways without going through some type of filtration process. If you're in a more maybe an unincorporated area of the county, maybe there isn't a sidewalk and a storm drain, but know that it will be moving to the nearest creek or stream or waterway. And so that's why we just like to offer alternatives to using products that pollute our waterways. And integrated pest management. So integrated pest management is the way we look at pest problem solving around the home and garden that's science-based. So in this case, we're talking about our garden today, and it allows us to look at the garden as a whole system. And then if we do see something that doesn't look right, perhaps a pest problem or even an insect, but let's just say maybe a plant is looking really wilty and we haven't had excessive heat, we want to really look a little closer and understand really what's going on. Did a gopher eat the root system, or did the irrigation system, is it clogged, or did it get chewed off somewhere else? And that's why that plant isn't getting watered. You know, we really want to understand what's going on before we jump to conclusions. And then from there, in the case, let's say, some pest insects like aphids, we ask ourselves, is this something we can live with? Because we know from previous programs that aphids, some pests, are actually food for our beneficial insects. So having a tolerance of some pests is a great thing. But then from there, we always want to properly identify the problem. And then we look at ways to prevent the problem from occurring again. And if we need to take action, the action steps in IPM are called controls. So cultural controls are going to be those things we do to increase the health of the garden by adding compost to the soil, by feeding with organic fertilizers and so forth. And then mechanical controls are the tools we use to manage the pest problems. Like, for instance, the case of gophers, we might plant all of our plants in gopher baskets. We might net our fruit trees with bird netting to prevent the birds from getting to the fruit before we do. We can also work with traps and other types of barriers. And then biological controls are inviting the beneficial living organisms to manage pest problems. So we're most of us are most familiar with beneficial insects such as ladybugs, but there's other biopesticides out there that are beneficial bacteria that help prevent certain pest problems from spreading. And then chemical controls are going to be the pesticides. And we always want to use these as a last resort when we've exercised all of the other controls. And we always want to use a less toxic option. But today our focus is going to be on cultural controls and mechanical controls, because when we're using these types of tools and increasing the health of the garden, as I mentioned before, we're going to reduce the stress on our plants, and then we're going to reduce pests that might occur. So gardening in California, we know that we live in a summer dry climate. So there's going to be many months during the summertime where we don't get any precipitation at all, no rain, okay? And that we typically get our rain during the winter months. And I always remember February as being like the big, the rainy month for February. However, how is drought any different nowadays? I mean, we really are seeing, hotter, drier weather, with longer summers. We're seeing more extreme heat events. We are even getting fewer winter nights that freeze. So we're getting less chill hours. The rains are coming in more flashy events where they're just like these atmospheric rivers that just dump a lot of water and then nothing for a long period of time. And because of this, now we're also looking at threats of wildfires and so forth. But how this pertains to our garden. So let's just look at how plants react to long periods of dry and long periods of heat, okay? Because normal heat is one thing, but excessive heat, or in the case where I am, it's been kind of mild and actually kind of cool. And then, you know, 75 to 80 degrees, and then all of a sudden 92 degrees. So the plants haven't really acclimated to that heat when it comes on that quickly. Plants have little pores on their plant parts, like their leaves, called stomata. The stomata are open and they allow the plant to breathe, so to speak, and also to photosynthesize, which is taking in that light energy and making it the sugars for the plant so that it can thrive. It also absorbs moisture through the root zone, and that moisture is going to move through the vascular system of that plant. When we have times of long periods of dry or long periods of heat, or even when we just get a super hot day out of nowhere, the stomata actually close to reduce that water evaporation because that plant wants to hold on to its moisture, okay? It's trying to protect itself. But what happens over a long period of the plant having its stomata closed to hold into that moisture is that that plant begins to get stressed. It's not photosynthesizing, so it's not able to create the food it needs in the form of that light energy from the sun. And then we also, if the ground is dry for a long period of time, we start to see those roots get dehydrated and they shrink. But then we also see plants' reaction, which could look like wilt. It could also we could see tip dieback, maybe leaves could yellow and fall. So there's a lot of things that start to happen. We can also see excessive pests, larger populations of pests coming in. We might see aphids lasting a little longer than normal, or having more abundance of aphids, for instance, than what would be normal. So these are all going to be signs of excessive plant stress. So how can we keep our plants healthy and happy by using less water? Because we want to keep them hydrated, right? We're going to learn how to water more efficiently. And it's really not that difficult. It's just going to take a little bit of changing our habits. So first, straight off the bat, you really want to understand how water is infiltrating into your soil. So clay soil, that water is going to move a little bit more slowly, and it might spread out a little bit more before it actually percolates into that in deeply. And that's something you really want to keep in mind. Whereas if you're in a sandier part of the county where that water is just going to straight down, it's not going to spread out. So these are some things to keep in mind when we are applying water, because we always want to apply water to that root zone. So we can use a hose. We can, hand water using a hose, but it is, I believe it's mandatory throughout the state. I'm not 100%, but it is in a lot of different counties that I work in. We want to have that hose and shutoff valve, or have some type of a trigger nozzle that can turn water on and off with your hands. So as you're moving through the garden, we can actually turn that wand off while we're moving from plant to plant. Now, in this case, in the picture, if it's a solid flower bed, we can just, move with ease without having to turn that trigger off. However, if we're going from the pots on the deck or on the patio, we are going to want to turn the water off as we go from container to container, or from raised bed to raised bed, because every drop counts. We can also use soaker hoses. Now, this is the soaker hose that I'm referring to, where the water weeps out of these very tiny pores. This is not the type of soaker hose that's kind of flat, that shoots water out like a sprinkler. That's not what I'm referring to. These are the soaker hoses that let the water weep out. It makes contact with the soil. This one is above the mulch a little bit, but typically they're touching the soil, and that water is able to soak right into the ground. We might also have emitters. Maybe some of us have drip systems where we have irrigation emitters, such as the picture on the left, or inline emitters that run through the PE tubing or the 1/4-inch tubing. Something to keep in mind with drip emitters is you want to know what is that the flow rate, how much water is coming out of those emitters, because there's no standard, unfortunately. And understanding if it's a 1/2 gallon per hour or 1 gallon per hour or 2 gallon per hour is really going to help you when you are dialing in and setting your irrigation controller. Okay, so some of us might work with smart controllers, which I highly recommend, but you still need to know what the flow rates are, because a 1/2 gallon per hour set for 30 minutes versus a 2 gallon per hour set for 30 minutes is a big difference of how much water is actually coming out of those emitters. And then there's sprinklers, pop-up sprinklers, oscillating sprinklers, all kinds of sprinklers. A lot of us are, use these. But I just want to share that this is the least effective way to water. And by all means, I'd like to encourage you to please avoid using sprinklers. There are rebates right now to switch from sprinklers, pop-up sprinklers, to drip irrigation. Please, I have a slide in a moment, and I'll send you information afterwards that will show you where you can get information and rebates for that. But sprinklers waste 30 to 50% of the water through evaporation alone before it even reaches the ground. So a lot of that water is lost just from the wind and the air temperatures and that evaporation. Sprinklers also can oftentimes apply water beyond where we really want the water to go. So that's something else we really want to focus on, is just only watering the root zones of the plants that we want to water and not other areas. Sprinklers are also prone to causing runoff, which runoff is something that is problematic, and we want to keep all that precious water on site. We don't want it going down the storm drain. And I can also share that sprinklers are also more prone to leak water at the sprinkler head. They're easily can get broken with a lawnmower or any other type of garden equipment. So just know that these are some pretty big problems. A broken sprinkler head can waste up to 25,000 gallons of water over 6 months. So oftentimes what happens is we turn that irrigation on in the spring, and we don't even really notice that the irrigation's broken, or maybe the gardener came and broke it and no one really noticed. And we don't notice for a number of months when we start to see that the plants are telling us something's wrong because they don't look good. And then we take a closer look and we're like, oh my gosh, I've been wasting all this water all this time. So a good thing to do is to work with our irrigation systems, get a controller, smart controllers. As I mentioned, there's rebates for those, and they're amazing, and they save you a lot of water. But by all means, switch to drip. It's going to be the most efficient and most effective way to water, because we're localizing that water and we're only watering and directing the water around the root zones where we really want it. It also allows us to water deeply because we can set the program and allow it to really saturate those roots in a way that those roots need, according to the plant's water needs. We can set these clocks for early in the morning when the air and soil are cool, which is ideal. We can also set the clocks for multiple start times, and this is going to prevent runoff, especially for those of us that have clay where that water is not infiltrating as quickly. It's a little bit slow. So we want to prevent that runoff. So what we do is we pulse that water out. We turn it on, and maybe after 10 minutes, we start to see that water pooling and starting to move away from where we want it. That's the threshold. So then we turn it off. And then we set that start time to start 30 minutes from then for 10 minutes. And then we let it to saturate And then we have it, different multiple start times so that it can do little portions over a period of time. And then the best time to water, as I've mentioned before, if you've joined our programs, is in the morning hours. The water agencies, I see everybody has a little different guidance of what they think is appropriate, which is fair. However, from a pest prevention standpoint, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., those sunrise hours are perfect. If you need to extend it to 7 a.m., that's fine. But we want those morning hours because we're going to prevent slug snails, earwigs, and a lot of other diseases that can occur when we're watering in the middle of the evening hours. And just remember that these are not set it and forget it systems. We are changing these clocks accordingly unless we've got a smart controller. Now, maybe we don't have a controller. Maybe some of us don't want to spend the money. We don't want to get involved in that kind of system. Well, there's these hose bib battery and solar operated controllers and timers. These are awesome. They're super reliable and very effective. I have them remote gardens around the property. So I have these hooked up to my hose bibs. I can also put a mobile water meter on each hose bib with my controller so I can really monitor how much water I'm using, what's my output. So these are super cool and not and very economical. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of water saving rebates, lots of money on the table for you. So smart controllers, lawn conversions, laundry to landscape, water harvesting. Of course, those you'll hear more about before the rainy season starts. But as I shared, I have a handout that I'll be emailing to you after the program that has all of this information, and all of these websites are listed. So when we water, we want to water deeply. Remember, we want to grow deep root systems. All right. When we water shallowly, and we happen to have a hot day, and let's just say, for instance, we have our irrigation clock set for 3 days a week, 15 minutes. It's the way I've been setting it for the past 20 years. It's always worked for me. I'll share why that might not be working. Is because when we water shallowly. That 15 minutes, maybe it was only getting down an inch or two. So we've only grown roots that expand about an inch or two. Now we have a hot day that came on unexpected, that water evaporated, and now that plant is going to be really stressed until it gets water again. All right. If we water deeply, we don't need to water again until the top few inches has dried. So we don't have to water as frequently. We're really able to reduce our water usage. But when we have a day that comes on of excessive heat, all of a sudden, this plant can handle it no problem because it's still accessing water and moisture at a much deeper level. So we want to grow our deep root systems as plants become established. Different plants will have take longer to become established. So for instance, perennials could take about a year. Small shrubs can take maybe 1 to 3 years. Larger shrubs and trees maybe could take 3 to 5 years, and trees could take anywhere from 5 to 8 years. So just know things can take a while to become established. And during that time, we are coaxing and trying to grow nice deep root systems. Now, I get this question a lot, like, how deep are we supposed to go? That sounds like you're really saying, 3 feet. And that's not the case. I want to share that with trees, we really want to get moisture down 6 to 12 inches deep. And with perennials, we're really looking at, I'd say, 4 to 6, even maybe 8 inches, and anywhere in between for shrubs. It's just, we understand that those root zones will continue to move the water to, because of the microbiology in the soil, the water will continue to move, that moisture will move deeper, but we just want to make sure we're getting water that deep. And when we water, we're always watering at that drip line, as I've shared. And that when we add mulch, the mulch is not at the crown, as in this illustration of the tree. The mulch is starting, I would say, a good 2 feet from that trunk, from, but this is going to apply to perennials. This will apply to our tomato plants. This will apply to our roses. So just because this is an illustration of a tree, understand that this applies to all of the plants in our garden, is that we're not putting that mulch at the crown and that we are watering at that drip line. So how much water do my plants need? So plants come with these handy dandy tags that give us a lot of information. Okay, so the plants tags are going to tell us, or if we look up these plants on, like maybe the Sunset Western Garden book, there's these terms that can be no water once established, low water, moderate water, or ample water. Ample water is going to be high. It is not going to be a bog plant. It's just going to mean it needs to just barely dry out between watering. But again, we're only adding water to the soil at the root zone as it has dried out accordingly. So no water once established means exactly that. We are not adding any additional water once established, or we can actually kill the plant, as I've done. Low water is going to mean watering deeply, and then we're letting that good solid 3 to 4 inches dry out. We really want to only water right at that point of when that plant is about to wilt. So really letting it dry out significantly. Moderate water actually teeters on low water. I feel like a lot of the language that we see in some of the books is older language. So moderate water is actually, I feel, it's less than we would expect. We're letting that soil dry out a good 3 inches before we water again. And then ample water, as I mentioned, is going to be more frequent. We're really just letting the soil dry out about 1 inch. Some examples of that would be, no water once established will be the Metelia poppy or the Romnea poppy or the fried eggplant. These are wonderful. They're gorgeous. They really are wonderful for erosion control or for hillsides to really hold those hills together, but do not water them. I have killed mine. I love this plant, but I can't believe it really needs no water once established. So I always give it a little extra water and nope, doesn't work. And then low water, an example would be a strawberry tree. Once established, it really doesn't want to be watered that frequently. It does want to get watered around its entire root zone, but not that frequently. Echinacea, a moderate water needs, would be something I consider teetering on water wise. So I am not watering my moderate plants very often. I really am letting them dry out a good 3 inches before I water again. And then high water plants would be a lawn, for instance, or some of our ferns that really prefer to be in those moist environments. So that's a good example there where we're just letting that soil dry out just about 1 inch. And then another question I get a lot is, how often do I need to water? Well, there are a number of watering schedules online. This one is just a pretty thorough example. But what I'd like to share, and I will share that there's a really cool resource, the Solano County. It's on the website. I'm sorry, it's on the handout that I'm giving you, but it helps you go through by when you enter your zip code and you kind of enter the types of plants you have and stuff. So that's going to be really cool. But what I'd like to share is, regardless of what are the watering schedules that are available to us, is that it really depends, and that these watering schedules should just be a starting point, because you really need to adjust the irrigation and how you water based on observation, because it really depends on the plant type and the watering needs of that plant once established. It also depends on how established the plants are. Plants that are newly planted, young plants, are going to need water more frequently until they become established. Plants that are established will not. So for instance, an established boxwood hedge requires less water than a brand new planting of native California climate appropriate native plants, because those plants, when they're first planted, need water until they become established until those root systems grow, they're going to need some help. And then it also depends on the texture of your soil. As I shared in the earlier slide, clay soil versus like a sandy loam, that water is going to infiltrate at a different rate. And then it also depends if there's a nice thick layer of mulch on top of your soil. If there's like 2-3 inches of mulch on the soil, we are reducing the frequency of our watering by at least 20% and up to 70%. Okay, that's how much, that's how we do not need to water as often when we have mulch on. We're saving so much water. And then it also depends on our microclimates of our garden. And those microclimates come in the form of how the sun is hitting our garden, how the shade is moving across the garden, how the wind is coming through the garden, how if there's a hot spot against the wall of like the garage or the house or the fence. And it also depends on the grade. So how do you know if you are overwatering or underwatering? Well, we're going to feel the soil. That's the thing. That's the trick right there. I get this question all the time. Also, we just want to stick our fingers in that soil and see, has it dried? The soil is always going to look dry on top, especially if we have a layer of mulch. It's always going to look dry. But if we go down, we're going to feel that soil is cool and moist. All right. If you don't want to stick your fingers in the soil, you can get moisture meters, but I just say get in the habit of feeling the soil. And what are the best plants to grow? Well, I like to give a shout out to growing our California natives, but choosing drought tolerant California natives or Mediterranean natives that are climate appropriate are going to thrive. That's what we want to go for, because once these plants are established, they're going to require less water. Okay. And then also understand when we're planting the right plant in the right place, we're also able to create a more water efficient garden that is going to be more drought tolerant and less desirable to pests. These are a sample of some California natives that I am growing. I can share that I do have non-California natives in my garden as well. I do have a mix. But you can't tell me that California natives aren't gorgeous. It is a joy to see them. And the other thing that is such a joy is the native pollinators that visit them, which is even more exciting. And something else I can share, as I mentioned in our last program, if you joined us then, that growing heirloom. If you like to grow food crops, choose heirloom varieties because they are best suited for our climate, and they are typically have roots that dive deeply. So they are going to be water savers. We won't need to water them as often. And that goes for our tomatoes and our summer squash. We really, once those root systems are established, we can back off on the frequency. We do not need to water every day or every other day. Trust me. And then some more resources that I like to share for growing a garden in California, our summer dry climate, are some awesome resources where you can learn more about the water needs of plants, which is WULCOs, which is water use classification. What is the Ordinance of Landscape? Oh, I don't even remember what the acronym stands for. I'm so sorry, but check it out. But it gets pretty thick. You go on that website, it's a lot of information. So Calscapes is another awesome website that I love going to because you just type in what the plant is. If you're looking for trees, it'll give you a list of trees. If you're looking for ground cover, it'll give you a list of ground covers. It's awesome. And that's going to be California natives, and it's run by the California Native Plant Society. And then, of course, the local UC Master Gardeners, the Solano County Master Gardeners has a wealth of information on their website about gardening through times of drought. And something I just like to point out is hydrozoning. If you're not familiar with this term, hydrozoning is grouping plants together with similar irrigation needs. Okay, so we're irrigating by zone, and we're planting those plants that share the same water needs together or in that same area. But it also goes for microclimate needs such as sun, shade, wind, and heat. Okay, and let's say we have an area that's established, plants are established, but I just want to add a couple more plants just to fill in. Well, we're not changing the irrigation to accommodate those new plants. We're keeping the irrigation set to accommodate that zone of established plants. And now we're just going to supplement those new plants with some extra hand watering, okay? So, but what can we do right now? Okay, I'm going to share some tools that we can use to conserve water. So I'm a huge fan of compost, and soil should never be an afterthought. We really want to get compost into our soil because compost holds 5 times its weight in water. Compost makes your soil more like a sponge in the good ways. Okay, you might say, but I've got clay. I don't need it to hold any more water. But trust me, when we add compost to clay, it actually adds airspace. All right, we're also getting that beneficial biology in the soil that's only going to improve those conditions. But what I want to share is that compost reduces water usage, okay? When we can increase the compost or the organic matter in the form of compost by roughly 5%, the soil's water holding capacity quadruples, all right? This is really important, again, regardless if it's clay or sand or anything in between. We also want to put a nice layer of mulch on the soil because when we do not have mulch on top of the soil, and I'm talking about a protective layer of organic wood chips. I'm not a fan of the stringy like redwood bark like gorilla hair. I'm borderline with the shredded cedar. I just really like the big chunky mulch. So I hope that I can encourage you all to work with that as well. And of course, in accordance to CAL FIRE's recommendations, but understand when there is no mulch, when the soil is bare, it creates a hard crust that makes water impossible to saturate in. And in fact, it starts to bead off. It's going to run off really quickly. But when we have that layer of mulch on top of the soil, it prevents that crust and it protects that soil and allows that water to infiltrate. Also, mulch is going to reduce the water evaporation rate significantly. As I shared, 2 inches of mulch is going to reduce water evaporation at least 20 to 70%. All right. So it means we won't have to water as often. And it also helps to regulate those soil temperatures. So even on a super hot day like this, 2 inches of mulch, if we dig down 4 inches, the temperatures around the root zone are 10 degrees cooler than the air temperatures, which is very significant with reducing the stress on the plants. But again, we always want to keep mulch away from the plants. And, a lot of benefits to feeding with organic fertilizers. It's the most sustainable way to feed our plants. But when we're talking about times of drought or times of excessive dry and heat, we really want to avoid using synthetic fertilizers because they're high in salts. And those salt levels, when we're not able to flush that fertilizer through the root zones, it builds up in the top few inches of that soil, which is really detrimental to our plants. I don't know about you, but if you've ever finished a bag of salty potato chips, how do you feel afterwards? Feel pretty thirsty. And guess what? Plants, when they're getting fed synthetic fertilizers, those root zones get really thirsty too. So please avoid using synthetic fertilizers during the times of excessive heat and dry. And we want to look at our irrigation systems. Okay, we don't want the sprinklers to go away or water anything that shouldn't be getting watered. We also, I want to encourage you again to switch to drip whenever possible. But it's not unlikely, it's not uncommon for critters to chew the irrigation tubing or the tubing to get a crack in it if we're digging in for a new plant. We don't see that irrigation tubing, or gardening equipment sometimes can cut it. But if you don't even know where your irrigation tubing is because it's buried like 3 or 4 inches down, that's another problem. So please, it's so important to, we want to get that out there, and we want to monitor, and we want to check out and make sure it's all working accordingly, because, broken irrigation, man, that can cost a lot of money, for your water bill, but also it's just thousands of gallons of water that's just getting wasted. And I'm not a lawn hater, but I want to really encourage you to reduce the size of your lawn and replace it either with a low water need turf replacement. There's many nice turf type of grasses that you can get that same look and appeal because, but I just want to share 1,000 square foot traditional turf lawn on average needs 500 gallons of water per week. That is a lot of water. This is 5 times more than just a moderate use perennial garden. Okay, so this is even low use. This is just the moderate. Remember, I just said that mainstream that kind of teeters on water-wise. So the lawns really are water hogs. So let's just switch them out with something that's more appropriate or reduce that size and plant something that's even prettier. Well, what else can we do? We're going to look at all the different ways we can reuse and recycle. Think about think about what would the garden look like? What would we need to do to water without even tapping into our municipal water supply? Well, I'm tapping into my municipal water supply by harvesting from the sink and tub. However, I'm waiting for that water to warm up, and this is water that normally would just be going down the drain. And this is perfect water for watering my container plants or my house plants, or, you know, supplementing those new plantings with water, okay? Or if anybody's kind of drooping on a hot day, if I feel like they just needed a little bit more, this is perfect. We also can look at installing a laundry to landscape gray water system. All the information you could ever ask for is on the very awesome website, Gray Water Action. The founder, Laura Allen, wrote the code for gray water usage in the state of California. She is the expert in gray water for the state. And there are some rebates I saw through some of the cities of Solano County offering rebates for setting up a laundry to landscape gray water system. It's very easy and it's excellent for getting water out to our trees and shrubs, our hedge lines, and larger perennials. So what I'd like to share is how do we, you know, one second. Yeah, how do we adapt to our climate change and to drought conditions? How do we adapt? Okay, we want to detain the rain. I know it's a little crazy for me to talking about rain in May, but you know, it takes a while to get some of these systems in place. And I'd like to invite you to consider getting at least one of these systems in place before our next rainy season, before November, even gosh, maybe October. And one of these systems is rainwater catchment. For every inch of rain that falls over 1,000 square foot surface, like a roof of a house, roof of a garage, roof of a shed, we can capture over 600 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. And you know, I know some of these larger catchment systems can be a little intimidating. They also can be a little pricey, but look at the picture on the lower left. These are rain barrels that are the blue ones that are daisy chained together. So you start with one, and then maybe you expand to 2 or 3, and then maybe expand them to 4 or 5. And the next thing you know, you've got 20, and you're able to capture hundreds of gallons of water. And guess what? Now we can water our garden with ease without even worrying about the water municipalities putting water restrictions on us, because look at all the water we've captured. We also want to consider to keep that water on site by creating rain gardens. And rain gardens are areas of the garden. This is not a pond. By any means. This is just a divot, a shallow bowl that is actually going to receive water that is coming off of our roof or overflow from those rain barrels. And it is positioned in a way that is going to saturate deeply to either reach those deeply rooted trees or to recharge our groundwater and aquifers. This also prevents water from leaving our property. We can actually keep it on site, and it reduces that impact that rainwater gets on our stormwater systems. And we want to increase permeable surfaces so that water can actually stay on site. So understand that if the root systems don't stop at a border, they will continue underneath concrete or asphalt or whatever it is. So let's make it a gravel or dried laid patio material so that when that water does fall, it can actually percolate and absorb right into that soil to continue to water our plants. And then this is actually something I had to do today. We want to protect our plants from the sun. So though a lot of our plants that we have in our garden can thrive in full sun conditions, the sun here in California, especially in Solano County, can get hot. All right. So please take advantage of shade cloth. What we're looking at is anywhere from like a 30 to 40% shade. That's going to say it on the package. It's always rated. So I actually had to set up my 30% shade cloth over my lettuces today because they are just not happy. And yeah, you always want to tent it. It's going to really be helpful. At some point, we might even have to, last year I had to employ some shade over my roses. They were getting burned. Also, my tomatoes were getting burned and my summer squash. So just keep that in mind. And then there's these really cool products on the market that kind of only get popular when we're in a drought, but anti-transpirants, which are kind of like lip balm on our lips or sunscreen if we're outside. It's a clear spray-on kind of waxy material that we spray on the plants to help them reduce how much moisture that is transpiring. So it's going to allow them to still keep their stomatas open and photosynthesize without losing moisture. Okay. And that's really the key here, right? We want those plants to still function, but stay hydrated. And that's what this product does. It's really cool. These products do have short-term benefits. They do break down after, I think it's about 5 or 7 days to read the label, but they're really helpful for plants that are really don't like those excessive hot days, or on new plants, young plants that have just been planted before those roots can become established. And then there's these water polymer products called hydrogels. These are non-toxic moisture retaining soil additives. They hold 200 times their weight in water, reduces the frequency of water by 50%. These are excellent for our color bowls, our hanging baskets, window boxes, container plantings. I will share Soil Moist is not the only brand, but it is one of the most common brands that we see. The blue bag on the left is the polymers that are synthetic. These are not going to be ideal for planting in the ground for using in ground planting or raised beds because they are permanent. These are really ideal for those plants that we are changing out seasonally, or the color bowls that might end up in the green can afterwards. But the green bag on the right, that is a plant-based soil moist product. It is going to, it's 100% biodegradable. So it is actually really great to use in raised beds or in-ground plantings. It actually breaks down after about a year. So just know that those are the differences, and those are my little precautions I have. Also, read the labels. This is a really important one to read the label because I, working for clients years ago at the beginning of my gardening time, didn't read the label. Let me tell you, it was like little ice cubes that were like these rubber ice cubes pushing the plants out. The client was like, what the heck? She thought it was an alien. I don't know. Just read the label and really follow what the label says. And then from there, we just want to monitor for pests. Remember, pool weeds, since they will compete for water. And also powdery mildew starts to come on strong when things get hot and dry. But we really want to remove those leaves, anything that's diseased, if it's the leaves, if it's the fruit, any twig dieback, let's just get those off site, okay? Because the spores are going to continue to blow in the wind and contaminate or infect other plants. More information on pest management and pest ID. We have the Our What Our World website, the UCIPM website, which is just a wealth of information. Bugguide.net helps us identify the insect we have, because again, if we can't properly identify it, we would not know if it's a good bug or a pest or how we would manage it. And then if you've got those pesticides in your arsenal and you have no idea what they're used for, or you've got questions or you want to learn more about them, you can always go to the National Pesticide Information Center. So a drought resilient garden, that's what we're all growing, right? Because when we practice healthy water practices, we are providing less plant stress, which means less pests, which means we don't need to use as many pesticides. And then we can really enjoy a gorgeous garden without being stressed ourselves. And I just like to give a little shout out. Don't forget about our pollinators. Our pollinator friends also need water. This is a glazed saucer that I have in my garden. I have a couple of them around where I just put some garden pebbles in, and then I fill the water up halfway. I don't use beach pebbles because they're too sandy, and I don't need to worry about being a vector for mosquitoes, because trust me, that water evaporates by the end of the day. Sometimes I even have to fill it up twice, but the pebbles are there as landing pads so our little pollinator friends don't drown. They certainly appreciate it too. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for joining us. I actually did finish in a timely fashion.